Gallery's breathtaking collections draw in more than 4.5 million visitors. But this place isn't just about the art of the past. In fact, the gallery's always been keen to stress its role both as an inspiration and even a catalyst for contemporary art. This week sees the opening of a new exhibition in which Bridget Riley, one of our leading painters, hangs her own work alongside that of the old masters. I came along to have a look. Bridget Riley first came to fame in the 1960s with her bold, black and white geometrical abstractions, the dizzy emblems of a giddy era. Now, it's not often that the National Gallery actively encourage people to paint on their walls, but for Riley's latest show, they've made an exception, as her team of assistants recreate some of her most recent works. But the focus of this exhibition is the surprising impact that the old masters have had on this thoroughly modern artist. Riley's chosen 3 painters from the National Gallery's own collection who have particularly inspired her. Now, the whole exhibition opens with a startling juxtaposition. On this wall, you've got Mantegna's depiction of a Roman procession painted in 1506, whereas over here, you've got Bridget Riley's own optically dazzling work of the mid-1960s. I think this is a kind of visual challenge. Riley seems to be suggesting that her own early work was inspired by pictures such as these, by the old masters. But how could this have inspired that? Well, to answer that question, I think you need to look at it in terms of its pictorial energies rather than its subject matter. And if you do that, you see it as a kind of surging, almost musical composition. These figures bringing in the cult statue, these figures responding. Look at the way in which these draperies seem to swirl and coil, almost like a whirlpool or a wave movement. And that takes me to Bridget's own picture, this wonderful wave-like composition. Soon you find that actually, yes, this is a picture that dances and moves and pulses. It's as if she has indeed taken all of the musical ideas, the rhythm, the energy, rephrased it, reframed it in the terms of her own art. After her early successes, Riley moved away from this black and white world into experiments with colour. But once again, she looked to the past and the Renaissance. One of the things I really like about this show is the way in which it gives you, so to speak, 2 for the price of 1. You get the influence of the old masters on Bridget Riley, but you also very much get the old masters seen through Bridget Riley's eyes, because to move from that very striking red, blue and pink abstract of hers in the next room to this picture by Raphael, which Riley has had hung in her exhibition, what you get, or what she makes you think about, is the way in which the old masters themselves used colour in an almost abstract way. Look at the way in which Raphael, in a sense just like Bridget Riley, has used a set of colour rhythms. There's this red, and it whirls up like that. There's this blue, a serpentine energy going like that. And there's this green, but above all this yellow, which snakes up. And it's as if all these colours are whooshing her up towards heaven. Riley's final choice of significant other is the 19th century post-impressionist Georges Seurat, and she's picked out some of his most delicate sketches. Here she's giving us a little nudge, a clue about what she's really about herself as a painter, what she wants to capture. And these pictures, this one in particular, seems to me to be all about capturing the evanescent play of light on water. And that sense of rapturous engagement with nature, it may surprise some people, but it lies absolutely at the centre of Riley's own project as a painter. You have to look for it. But that same love of nature shines out even from her most apparently abstract work. Right at the start of her career, Riley was very upset by the label that got attached to her paintings. They were examples, it was said, of op art, optical art. But she didn't like that label because she felt it projected a completely incorrect view of her as an artist. Whereas for her, the motivation behind these pictures was actually very different. It was to use the language of abstract art to create a kind of equivalent for some of the more elusive, evanescent experiences of nature. You need to stare at these pictures for them to work their effects, and when you do that, you get this extraordinary sense of sparkle, of shimmer, of lights dazzling. And what I think is very interesting is that Riley painted this picture at the start of her career in the early 60s. Here she is at 80, and she's returned to this vocabulary of form and this palette. She's working with circles, and she's working in black and white. Now, this is one of Riley's most recent works, and certainly one of her most monumental creations. If you keep your distance, you'll just experience it as a bewildering set of geometrical circles, almost like bubbles. But if you walk into it and you perform it, you walk along it, you get this much more unstable visual experience. Now, a few years ago, she wrote a rather romantic essay about her childhood growing up on the Cornish coast. And as a little girl, she used to go swimming. And in that essay, she wrote, "On a fine day, all was bespattered with the glitter of bright sunlight, with its tiny pinpoints of virtually black shadow. It was as though one were swimming through a diamond." The actual title of the piece is Composition with Circles 7. But it's so lyrical, I wish she had just called it Swimming Through a Diamond. This is a beguiling show, one that plots the exhilarating pathways that connect past and present, helping us to see the old masters afresh and Bridget Riley's own work in a new light.